The soldier had been dead for 7 hours and 15 minutes, but scientist Neo insisted that he would be alive within 10 minutes. The assistant then put the consciousness extractor on the soldier's head, opened his eyelids, and used a neural probe to pierce his eyeball and connect it to his optic nerve. The soldier's memory was like data. The probe was transmitted to a glowing hard drive. Now it was Neo's turn to perform. He skillfully installed the soldier's memory into the brain of a bionic man and quickly completed this seemingly impossible transplant operation. After the assistant activated the bionic man, I realized that this was how the soldier was resurrected. To confirm whether the memory was successfully transplanted, Neo performed some simple tests, but it was clear that the human brain was not compatible with the mechanical body. Soon, a rejection reaction occurred. The android suddenly became violent and scratched his face. The situation once became very difficult. Neo, who was very quick-witted, cut off the power supply. This also meant that the experiment failed again. An experiment would cost millions of dollars. As the owner of a biotechnology company, he could not take it anymore and decided to shut down the project. Disappointed, Neo looked at his watch and remembered, today is a day to spend time with family and friends. Fortunately, the pleasant time spent on the road temporarily helped Neo forget the troubles of a long day's work. But suddenly a huge truck came from the front. Neo quickly dodged it. His wife quickly looked at the 3 children standing behind him. Fortunately, they were all fine, just now regaining consciousness. A large broken branch on the roadside pierced straight into his wife's body. The car lost balance and fell off the road into the lake. When Neo woke up again, he was the only survivor in the family. Seeing the 4 bodies lying on the ground, ordinary people would have fainted long ago. But a scientist with high intelligence named Neo said, under heavy pressure, he made a bold decision. He called his partner and best friend Ed. Time was running out and there was no time to explain cause and effect. Ed looked at the consciousness extractor in his hand and the 4 bodies on the ground. The tacit consent they had gained from working together for many years also made him instantly understand Neo's idea. But only by extracting memories. The memories of Neo's family can be implanted into the android. Here I would like to introduce Ed's work. He also researches animal cloning technology in a biotechnology company. You are right. Neo wants to clone his dead wife and children. However, Ed immediately stopped this absurd idea. Not to mention how risky this technique is. Even if Neo's family is successfully cloned, their brains will still be in the infant stage unless it is combined with memory implantation technology. But no experiment has been successful so far. Ed advised Neo not to make the same mistake again. Yes, what could be more terrifying than losing your family? It was this overwhelming love that made Neo extremely paranoid. Ed finally decided to help his only friend, but there were only 3 breeding chambers, which meant Neo would have to give up one person. There was no time to waste. In a hurry, Neo picked up the youngest daughter. After a brief period of sadness, the 2 immediately began the cloning experiment. In 17 days, if even one value of the synthetic compound is wrong, the clone will mutate. During this period, Neo simply stayed in the underground laboratory, while Ed continued to serve as cover. The initial stage went smoothly, and the clones gradually assumed human form. Casey's living person disappeared for more than 10 days. People around him would definitely notice something unusual. Indeed, Neo's son's class teacher came to his house that day. Neo had to lie that his son was sick and hospitalized. For the time being, he got away with it. When they opened their family's mobile phones and social software, they were shocked to see hundreds of unread messages and missed calls. Neo had no choice but to reply in his family's tone. He managed to fool everyone temporarily. There was still 1 day left for the clones to be made. However, the memory implantation simulation test was in the failure stage. What was worse was that if the clones were not taken out of the incubator today, they would grow according to the growth rate set by the catalyst. Soon, they will grow old and die. After careful consideration, Neo can decide that he will free his family first, and then think about memory transplantation. But in the second before opening the door, no one knows what things will look like inside. But when Ed removed the hatch, he finally saw this person who was only 17 days old. He grew into a 40-year-old clone. Now, he has only the intelligence of a newborn baby, and his memory is like a blank sheet of paper. Neo had to inject a sedative into the clone. Ed couldn't believe that they really succeeded. I never thought that cloning technology would become reality. Neo successfully revived his wife, eldest daughter, and son. But now the most difficult thing is how to transplant their memories into the clone's brain. Neo is scared at this time after seeing failed experiments again and again. He doesn't want his family to become like this. As a husband and a father, I think he tried his best. But when Neo wanted to end his wife's life, a phone call stopped him. It turned out that the boss of the biotechnology company urged Neo to come to work early. It was this unintentional act that caused Neo to see the consciousness detector when he accidentally touched his wife's hand. It had fluctuations, but when he removed it, the fluctuations disappeared. At this time, Neo suddenly realized that he quickly called his friend Ed and couldn't wait to tell him his guess. It turned out that the failure of the previous experiment was not due to technical problems, but because the human brain was implanted in the bionic brain. He himself doesn't know, so after waking up, he still wants to connect with the human body and organs. But the android's body is made of cold titanium alloy, so how can it be connected? That's why there is an immune response. Now Neo's family is a clone, and their bodies are real flesh and blood. This means that there is no problem. Ed also agreed with this view. Without delay, Neo immediately underwent a memory transplant operation. This is a cross-age scientific technology. The attack occurred as soon as Neo pressed the recognition button. After waking up, his wife called Neo's name. This means that the memory transplant was successful. The next day, the family sat together and had breakfast as usual, as if the car accident had never happened. However, when the wife was running, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Thinking that she might have eaten something bad, she did not pay much attention to it. At night, when the eldest daughter fell asleep, Neo used the consciousness extractor to erase the memories of the car accident, but his wife found out about all this. After sleeping in the same bed for decades, Neo knew he couldn't hide this from his wife. When his wife found out he was a clone, even though she was shocked, she decided to admit it. After all, it wasn't easy for her husband to survive alone in that dark moment. The next day, the family went to the park to pick out a Christmas tree. The wife accidentally saw a little girl dressed in red and remembered something. After returning home, the eldest daughter pointed out that there was a strange name written on the wardrobe, which was Zuo Yi. Who is that person? Before Neo could say anything, his wife asked why there were so few photos in the corridor. What was even more strange was that there was not a single family photo. Neo wanted to continue lying, but his wife saw through him at a glance. At this time, the doorbell rang, and Zuo Yi's story was temporarily interrupted. Unexpectedly, the uninvited person turned out to be Neo's boss. Upon reaching outside, the boss explained everything clearly. It turned out that he knew everything about the cloning experiment. He did not stop it because the money-making potential of this technology was so great that it could not be denied. However, when the police found out about the cloning, the company will go away, so how can we talk about making money? So the boss asked Neo to hand over the kernel algorithm with a lump sum price, and promised to give him one night to say goodbye to his family. The company will come back the next day to pick up the 3 cloned experimental bodies, otherwise the killer standing outside the door will break in. Desperately, you had to hand over the kernel algorithm. When the boss thought he was going to succeed, you suddenly attacked and knocked the boss unconscious. The wife in the room could not sit quietly anymore, so you had to tell the truth. So this is my daughter. I can't bring you all back. I erased her from your memory, and you took back the memory of my child. I'm sorry. I won't blame you. If you still want to hate me, I'll leave. The kids have to leave. Kids, we have to go. A trusted partner is someone who trusts each other. However, no matter where Neo and his family flee, the company will follow them. His wife Mona connects this to the regular pain in her stomach and guesses that all 3 of them have been implanted with trackers. Fortunately, Mona had medical experience. She told Neo to go back to the clinic where she worked and planned to use the pacemaker's pulse to test the tracker. However, the assassin sent by the company had already come down, and the pulse was flowing through his body. At this time, the assassin chasing outside saw a signal disappear on the screen. It turns out that the mother Mona is using the pacemaker's pulse to burn the tracker into the child's body. Now it's the son's turn. Another signal disappears. The last person is Mona herself. Seeing the killer approaching, the husband Neobert presses the switch, and the last signal disappears. When the killers reached the operation room, they had successfully escaped in the car. Soon, Neo arrived at a pier. He remembered that his friend Ed had said that the key to the 8th cruise ship was hidden in the fish river, but there was nothing inside. At the same time, the killer was without any tracker. They were caught again. When Neo heard the noise and came out, he saw that his family had left. The scene changed, and the boss of the technology company gave the keys of the cruise ship to Ed. It turned out that Ed had been bribed. When Neo caught him, Ed tried to explain to him that he had no choice, but the boss sitting next to him shot him. In order to protect his family, Neo had no choice but to hand over the algorithm program for memory implantation. After a complicated operation, the android in the next room slowly raised his head. After completing the programming, the boss got the algorithm program he wanted, but the next moment he went back on his word and wanted to kill Neo's wife. At this moment, a bionic man opened the door and the assassin started firing en masse. This small loss was useless in front of Tatkin. Soon the bionic man killed everyone. Neo's family outside had a good chance to escape, but before leaving, Neo looked at his wife. His wife immediately understood what he meant. It turned out that Neo was not editing the algorithm program for memory transplantation. Instead, he transplanted his own memory into the android. This was his life's work. Before leaving, he wanted to know what would happen when a person's memory and consciousness were transferred to a robot. What kind of feeling is this? Science has risen at this time. The boss, who was still breathing on the ground, said. He said that even if he died, the company would definitely send someone else. This would make the situation even worse. Neo also gave the boss, who had frozen to death, a win-win option. The scene changed. In an office building in Dubai World Center, the clone's boss is once again cheerful and welcoming his first big client after his rebirth. The one who performed the operation is none other than Neo's bionic robot. Meanwhile, on a beautiful beach, Neo is holding the hand of his little daughter, Joy, and walking slowly towards his wife. The family is finally reunited. What makes them even happier is that a robot named Neo is working outside to earn money for them. He is definitely a winner in life. However, fans who are familiar with Keanu Reeves should know that his life off-screen is not satisfactory, so he uses movies to fulfill his desires on screen. This can be considered a kind of therapy. If this cloning technology becomes popular, will you support it? Tell me your reasons.